Mastery Podcast. This is Scott Tousignant along with Bryan Krahn. Today we're going to be discussing tempo. It's something that, I don't know, some people are really rigid with. They follow a set tempo all the time. Some people go super slow all the time. Some people have a set standard tempo. Some people think tempo is negligible. It shouldn't even be a concern of yours. For myself, I use kind of tempo. I change my tempo intuitively. Sometimes it's at the end of a training phase where I just kind of, instead of taking a deload, I'll go a little lighter with the weight, which is a deload, but just slow down the movements. And for myself, my workout partners, after September, we were really kind of pushing it for the past few months and not really feeling beat up, but feeling like we didn't have it in us to push, lift some heavy loads and all that stuff. We're like, man, it's getting ready time for us to kind of focus on some lighter loads. That's a topic for another conversation. But instead of just doing like higher reps and all that stuff, we're like, let's just reduce the weight, slow down our tempo, work on that mind-muscle connection. I think all of us at some point kind of get wrapped up in trying to go heavier. We love trying to progress by increasing the weights, and I think that's what we were doing for the previous few months, and just got to the point where like, man, I can't increase the weight anymore. So instead of progressing through weight, I'm just going to progress through mind-muscle connection, quality of every rep. And so far for the past 3 weeks, it's been freaking phenomenal. It's been nice and easy on my joints, and the mind-muscle connection for me has been solid, especially with chest movements, quads. It's been great. So today we're going to dive into tempo and just talk a little bit more about that. And Bryan, what are your thoughts on like rigid tempos and changing tempo, programming? Do you program tempo into your training for yourself, for your clients? What are your views on tempo?
I used to send out like prescribed tempos with exercises, and then I don't so much do that anymore. But I think what people fail to understand with tempo, it's not so much that you should be counting a cadence like 4 seconds down or 2 seconds up or whatever, or following like a strict, do this tempo for this exercise or this for the other. I think in a lot of cases it's kind of self-fulfilling. Like you're gonna have a bigger exercise, typically you're going to have a longer eccentric tempo, like a squat. The point for me with tempo is just that it's something that you should be aware of, because a lot of people, especially when they're just starting out or they're new to an exercise, they rush it. They don't take the time to like learn the exercise, how it should feel. And when you slow down the tempo, it can really help with doing that. So I think, long story short, I think it's an awesome kind of teaching tool. As well as like a reinforcing tool. Like whenever I'm doing an exercise and I just realize, wait a minute, where am I feeling this? I still get that sometimes. The first thing I do after I verify, like, am I doing this properly, is slow down the tempo. And just like actually really get inside the rep, if that makes any sense.
Yes.
So it's, for me, to answer your question, it's not so much, you should do a 4 second eccentric and then a 1 second concentric and pause. It's more like, just be mindful of the rep of the lifting cadence, and for certain exercises, and lifting cadence will be a little bit different. So, I think it works, but not in the way that people, the haters think it is. Like, it's not so much following a freaking 4 second or 5 seconds or this second. It's more like just being aware of it.
Right. 100%. And no matter what your set tempo is, it's not the same for every single rep. As you're struggling at the end, your last rep, it's usually going to take you a little longer to get it up with the concentric than the first couple of reps. As you're struggling, the heavier the load is even though you're trying to be explosive with that heavy load to get it up, there's sometimes it's gonna take you a lot longer to get it up to the top. So it's varied.
And it's I know, especially with the concentric, it's the intention. If you're always intend to be explosive, I mean, that's good enough. Like, even though if the rep isn't explosive because you're tired, fatigued, as long as you have that intention, like that's sufficient. For me, it's more the eccentric that I think where people kind of, and that's so important for hypertrophy, especially, is lots of tension and control in the eccentric. And that's where I really kind of, if I'm going to talk about tempo or prescribed tempo, that's where I'll really kind of drill down.
Yeah.
Like concentric concentric means positive, the lifting portion of the rep, for those who may not know. But yeah, like that's where I always like, as long as it's explosive on that or intends to be explosive, like that's good enough. And it's the eccentric or the lowering where, I think you pay dividends to slow it down sometimes and really, like even something as simple as a bicep curl.
Yeah.
I'll see people drop the weight. Like you know what I mean? They're basically dropping the weight, even though they're holding it. It's like, why don't you just create some tension, slow it down, fight it on the way down, have that. For me, that's tempo training.
Yeah.
It's being mindful in the rep like that.
Yeah. 100%. And as soon as people slow it down, like, whoa, that's how it's supposed to feel. Yeah. For me, like that slowing down the eccentric contraction, feeling that stretch, you're like, wow, okay, that's exactly where I'm supposed to feel it. You feel the stretching movement, whether it's the bicep curl on the way down, you're doing a bench press and you start to feel my pecs stretch on the way down. Like, all right, now I know the muscle I'm supposed to work, and it helps me engage for the contraction because my mind is right there. And I feel that stretch is awesome. Yeah. Then you contract it on the way up, so you're in that moment.
Like that's a perfect example. Like I've recently started training my incline chest work a lot higher, like trying to bring it down.
Yep.
Just closer to my neck as opposed to more like midline.
Yep.
And so obviously it's a bit new, even though it's a subtle variation, it's new for me. So the first thing I did was I lightened the load a bit and I slowed the tempo, so to that eccentric. So I'm bringing it down, and it's a new, it feels different. I want to get the most out of it and create that connection.
Yeah. So
if I was just blasting the weight up and down like a piston, it just wouldn't work.
Exactly.
It wouldn't have to,
I've been the exact same way, especially with the incline coming up higher, elbows out a little bit more, which you got to be careful with the shoulders, but it forces you to go a little bit lighter. But if you're slowing down that movement, you can really feel the stretch. And that it was something even with dumbbells that I got from you when I came out to visit last month. I noticed that you were up higher even with the dumbbells, and you were getting a great stretch in the movement. I'm like, man, it's a completely different feel coming up a little bit higher. Really felt it a lot more. And I find like when people really rush the eccentric, the beginning of their movement for the concentric it's not controlled. It's explosive. They're using a lot of tendon or supporting muscles, where ideally you want to make sure that you're engaging that contraction with the target muscle out of the gate. So going nice and slow, you feel that stretch, and right away it kind of gets you in that mindset.
The tension builds up.
Yes.
Yeah, and you maintain it like throughout the set. Like it doesn't like, if you're going as fast as you can or you're just not mindful of it, there's so many points where you lose tension.
Yeah.
I mean that's
for sure.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah.
And I think even going back to just that mindful intuitiveness and not really following a set tempo per se, but being present in that moment. I even just yesterday during some of we hit upper body and I was doing some bench pressing and I was going nice and control, like feeling that stretch. And there's a couple reps where I'm like, fuck, I'm just gonna hang down here for a second or two and embrace that stretch. And then before moving it, so I felt that stretch. I'm engaged with my mind is connected with the pecs. I'm like, then before I even lifted, I squeezed, I contracted my pecs and then pushed the bar up. I'm like, fuck, that's awesome. Then I even started slowing down the contraction a little bit. So instead of an explosive 1 second contraction, I did a 2 second, like really focused on squeezing the pecs on the way up. I fuck, it changed the experience. It's not necessarily say that one is better than the other. Just like, it just gets you present, mindful in that moment, and it's not something you have to do all the time, but it carries over to those moments even when you speed up your tempo a little bit. You're aware of what's going on.
Yeah, totally. So I mean, to all the tempo haters, I get it. You shouldn't, you don't have to bring a metronome to the gym or do this, all this counting in your mind or count reps to your client, like count cadence to your client. I know I used to do that in my younger years. I certainly don't do that anymore. But it's more like yeah, it's just being mindful of contraction speed and eccentric, and just going inside, like literally going inside the rep and saying how's making your body feel it as much as possible, because that's bodybuilding, man. I mean, that's one of the differences between strength training and bodybuilding, is just the performance of the rep. So
yeah, and there's a big difference between slowing it down with like a 2 to 3 eccentric contraction, going from that to like a 4-second eccentric. It's 1 extra second makes it, or 1 to 2 extra seconds makes a big difference lowering that weight. Yeah. You have to reduce the weight a little bit. So some people would argue, you have to go lighter with that. But when you're only slowing it down just a little bit, it's not going to make that big of a difference. And if you're feeling the tension exactly where you feel it, I think you're going to get a lot more benefit from it anyways. But pushing it to like an 8 to 10 second eccentric contraction, I think you have to reduce the weight so much that it takes a long time to feel the stretch. It's the weight's so low that it takes forever to feel that tension in the muscle.
That is my biggest pet peeve to all you tempo haters, people who pull out that strawman argument.
Yeah.
They always bring out like a 10-second eccentric. They're like, I'm like, that's way extreme, man. Who the frick does a 10? Well, anyway, like, sure, actually I do that occasionally, but that's not like, we're talking like a 3 to 4 second eccentric on a big lift, like a squat. Like, it's not 10 seconds. Right. That's the big difference. Of course, your loads can be way lower with such a long eccentric. So I mean, it's a bit of a straw man argument there.
Yeah, totally agree. So tempo is something to play around with. Use the slower tempos from time to time, just as a tool to helping enhance your mind-muscle connection. It's great if your body's been feeling a little bit beat up and you don't want to. And that's the thing with me. Like this, I still stick with the program. I'm still doing lifting in 6 to 8 rep range, all those different rep targets. I'm just choosing a slightly lower weight for each of those rep ranges than I normally lift, and just slowing down the tempo a little bit. So use it from time to time. That's something you need to do all the time. But vary your tempo. And just don't go by set numbers. You can do it intuitively. It doesn't have to be the same every single rep. It's not a matter of an exact number that you should be counting down. It's just slowing down the movement or speeding up the movement. It's just simple. Keep it simple, but it's all about feel and being present in that moment with each rep.
Boom.
Excellent, man. All right, great topic. I love that topic. Tempo is fantastic, especially when it ties into mindfulness and all that stuff.
Yeah.
All right, gang. Thanks for joining us today. Physique Mastery Podcast. Again, go visit physiquemasterymovement.com for more information on our group coaching and everything else that we got rolling on here.
That group is awesome, man.
Oh my God, it's an amazing group. If you want to surround yourself with like-minded, positive people who are all on the same page together, following the same program, it's incredible. Can't get better than the Physique Mastery Movement for sure.
Yeah.
All right, man. Catch you next time.